The therapist told me, the best thing that you can do for your child is imagine their bright future. Imagine their bright future? Imagine their bright future? Believe me, I really wanted to do that. But how would I even begin? It was August of 2012, and my 16-year-old had just come home from her third visit to a psychiatric hospital in less than a year. Despite mandatory meetings between therapists, psychiatrists, and myself to formulate safety plans for her, all I knew for certain was that nothing was safe. Her repeated attempts to end her life had left me trembling and desperate for any future at all. I was a single mom who didn't know another parent with a transgender kid, not one. I'd searched until I found one book of true stories written by parents with transgender children, but all of the stories ended badly for both parents and kids. How could I begin to imagine a bright future? I couldn't see it. Without a map or a model, the best that I could do was stumble toward it in the dark. When my vibrantly curious, history-loving kid dropped out of high school, my heart plummeted. She barely left the room, let alone the house. That is, until she took up smoking. Whenever she lit up, she went out to our front porch. Some neighbors and family members felt compelled to remind me of the dangers of cigarettes, just in case I forgot to read the warning labels. But I was relieved to see my kid outside and still breathing. Call me when it could kill her today, I thought. Call me then. Meanwhile, my daughter was still alive and incrementally moving towards becoming herself. This required one quiet act of courage after another. When she asked me to help her get hormone replacement therapy, I found a short list of recommended docs online, and I called the first 3. Each time I had to explain to the person answering what it even means to be transgender. Each time I did, I was met with stammering or silence. When I saw that the next doc on my list was located in the Mormon neighborhood I'd grown up in, I quit dialing and I let my head fall to the table. Desperate, the next day I drove to the Pride Center at the university and called them, crying from the parking lot. And even though neither my daughter nor I were students at the time, they kindly invited me in and referred me to the very same doc I hadn't dared to call. And to my surprise, the only trans-affirming care provider in all of Utah and Wyoming at the time was right there in my childhood neighborhood. My daughter began her medical transition and soon after accomplished her social transition. She named herself Beatrice, after Dante's protagonist who served as a guide out of hell. She chose the name equally for B. Arthur of the Golden Girls, a tall woman with great humor, heart, and dignity. I was delighted to have a daughter. We went to the hairstylist together. We shopped for pretty dresses. She asked to borrow my clothes and jewelry. Whenever she liked something of mine, I gave it to her. I remember the first time I saw her admire herself in our full-length mirror. She twirled, and her dress rippled out into a wave. And at last, I saw that bright future taking a shape. Beatrice started dating. She fell in and out of love. She moved out of our house. She moved back. Eventually, she decided to move to another state and make her own home in Tucson, Arizona. And I knew then that she was leaving the nest for good to finish that essential work of growing up. On a return visit, she called me from a halfway point along the drive. "Right now, I am smoking my last cigarette," she proclaimed. I wasn't so sure about that. I anticipated a rough week ahead. True to her nature, she arrived with a precise plan for negotiating withdrawals. When her hands needed something to do, she planned to occupy them on her phone learning German with Duolingo. When she experienced a physical craving, she planned to disrupt it by eating a whole raw jalapeno. After a couple of days at home, she spoke exclusively German. And on several occasions, she did indeed consume an entire jalapeno. And it was disruptive, as promised. There was swearing, gasping, choking, a lot of laughter. To my amazement, her plan worked, and I knew then that I was not only watching my daughter choose to live, but watching her opt in for the long haul. Soon after, she fell in love with Ellery, a willowy, non-binary student of mathematics working towards their PhD. They are smarter than me, my daughter confided. I've never heard her say that about anybody else. A few years later, on May 21st of 2022, Beatrice and Ellery got married at an Episcopal church in Tucson. They were encouraged to co-create their liturgy. A reading from Albert Einstein began Ellery's contribution. For the sequence hymn, my daughter chose Die Gedanken sind frei, a resistance hymn celebrating free and flowering thought, popular during the student revolutions of 1848 and then later in anti-Nazi movements. This might have been the one and only time this song has ever been sung at a wedding. Wedding guests included my Mormon cousins, Ellery's Trump-allegiant father, and Jewish step-grandparents who flew in all the way from Florida. Ellery, who usually rocks a t-shirt and shorts, donned a gossamer white gown that paired perfectly with Beatrice's burgundy velvet dress. As they processed to the altar, flower girls scattered rose petals on their path. Framed by stained glass windows, a priest in full vestments proclaimed them wed. And this was a bright future I could never have imagined in 2012. I wish that I could travel back in time to whisper sweetly and confidently in my own ear, someday your kid will get married and people will rise to cheer. But there's no way I would have believed that in 2012, and yet here I am telling you tonight that my daughter married the love of her life, and when she did, over 100 jubilant people rose to their feet in exuberant applause. They rose to their feet to cheer. In preparing for this event, I recalled many stories. So why did I choose this one? I chose it to remember that in the darkest, most terrifying time of my life, there was a bright future awaiting that defied my imagination. I chose it because it's darker again out there, sometimes in here. The support center that led Beatrice and countless others to life-saving, affirming care is now shut, closed down by Utah lawmakers who also banned even the words diversity, equity, and inclusion. They banned the words. Our kids are not just marginalized, they're targeted in coordinated attacks. And I don't know how not to be afraid. But I do know how to lean towards life with all of my might. I've done it before. But this time it's different. This time I know that I'm not alone. And I know that we are not alone. Here we are in the same room, which proves we know how to find each other. No one is coming to save us, so look around. Look around this room. Here we are together to lift each other up and to defend our children. So what can we do now for all of the kids whose lives are at stake? We can fiercely and tenaciously lean toward their bright future. We can get behind it with all of our weight. We can stand up. We can disrupt. We can advocate. This is what love requires, and I came here tonight to do it with you. So tell me, are you with me? Yes. Are you with me? Yes. Are you with me? Yes. Thank you. Thank you.